Hold on.
Are we full again?
Yep. I'll stop right now. I'll give you a minute to make some room.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
So you were one.
Storage is almost full.
Oh, it's
So we got to get rid of some old files from the previous meetings to have enough room to record this one so we can get it out. And I promised Chris Adams that it would be up on YouTube within a day or two because he can't be at this meeting. So,
Okay. By somebody else. Yeah. So there were two names there, so I just, but then I fat fingers his last name. He caught me. It will happen. We had 78 entries.
Yeah.
Wow. Cutting 78 down to 8 is pretty tough.
Yeah. Are you the only judge on that?
Oh, I have three others.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The whole way up. And then we have particular scenes.
Oh.
just let me know when you're ready, man.
Okay.
Second place in the scene. Was the guy who's.
I'm trying to. Everybody else. I use this.
Carry 4 hours.
You're finally getting around that.
And there's a lot of subjectiveness in
But I
it.
got
There's no place in wording for, when you get out of it.
Might be good for the computer.
What's that?
What business is it for an
Okay. Well, while we're waiting to get some room to start the recording, just a reminder, we have the white elephant table over here. There are also some lists of items for sale, I believe, over here on the table.
Yeah, on the piece of paper.
On the piece of paper here, if you guys want to peruse any of that. We've got some members putting up models here too for display. So during breaks, or during our lunchtime, by all means, we're good to go. Excellent. All right.
Yeah, just when you want to use it. Oh, of course, check that they do this last night.
All right. Here we go. All right. I want to welcome everybody to December's meeting for the Nutmeg Division and our annual holiday party. Hope everybody's hungry. I recognize a lot of faces out there, but there's a lot of faces that I haven't seen in quite some time. Most faces I recognize from train shows and other events. So how many people haven't been at a Nutmeg meeting in the last 2 or 3, say? Wow, that's really good. Well, I hope we make the meeting worth your while and you'll come back and visit more often. So one of the things we did change, I'll just jump ahead, is that now we're trying to do every other meeting at a remote location. So if some of you are from further out in the division, we're trying to rotate the meeting spot around on every other meeting. Last month we were up in Springfield, so we were able to hit our 2 Massachusetts counties. And again, it's new layouts for the layout tours. It's a shorter drive for the people that are up in that area. Next meeting in February, the intent is to have a shoreline meeting, probably somewhere around Lyme, Essex, in that area. I've got one of our members, Chris Adams, who's volunteered to try to get us a meeting location down there. And after that, we'll probably go back to Western Connecticut, do something out along the Naugatuck Valley somewhere, hopefully get the Naugatuck Railroad involved again. And then after that, we'll rotate out to Eastern Connecticut again. We had Mark Herrick set it up last year. And then went over really well. Probably going to be our rotating schedule as every other meeting. We'll go north, south, east, and west around the division. It allows us to pull in more layouts. You know, if we're always meeting here, either we have to drive a lot farther to get the layouts, or we're just not getting layouts that, you know, available to the membership to view. So hopefully that'll help things a lot too. So we are trying to really shake things up here in the division. We appreciate that. For those of you guys that don't know, I'm Art Dutra. I'm the new superintendent, and I've got a great board and a great staff, and we're working hard for everybody here to try to get more value out of your memberships. So we had our social time here. Hope everybody talked to one another. We'll have the member showcase here, business meeting and news clinic. We only have one clinic today, so we can make time for feasting afterward. But Don has agreed to run his soldering clinic again. He kind of ran up in Springfield, and there were people that were asking about doing a little bit of hands-on possibly. So we're going to let Don rerun and have as much time as he needs to make everybody happy about soldering. And we'll have our lunch break, and then we have 2 layout tours. They're both here in Wethersfield, so they're very short drives for everybody. So welcome. Before I get into the modeler showcase, we do have a guest here today. Rich, did you want to come up and speak? Sure. Rich has got a pretty interesting situation.
I have lovely news. I'm a member of the New Haven Society. I'm also on the board of directors. We got evicted. We have a month to get out, but they're pushing us to get out. Everybody in the club had a meeting yesterday, and they're very disorganized, and we probably I'm going to cut the layout up. The 2 guys who put it up, and I just have they haven't cleared the track yet, which is makes my job very tough. So
in Wallingford?
In Wallingford, in the railroad station. So we got evicted because the town is redeveloping it, and the other people that are there, the school board and the nursery, are still there. They didn't get evicted. We got evicted. Okay, I guess we don't pay enough money or whatever for three tiny things that could be like it's dirty. We had chemicals in there, and the egress is not code. It hasn't been code since they redid the government redid the building. It's only been in one paper, and so I just want to tell you, I have a turntable. It's mine. I'm putting it up for sale, and it's the best offer. I have a price on it, but the best offer, it's going to them. I'm trying to raise money because to move and to get a new place is going to be expensive. I'm trying to raise money. This is the start. I have a ton of stuff, and they don't want to sell their HO stuff. For what reason, I have no idea. But you know, they're like deer in headlights right now, and they're having a tough time. That's all. Thank you very much. Question?
Yeah.
Is there an interim solution, like a storage unit available, or you haven't got that far yet?
We're putting it in somebody's storage unit, but it's already half built, so we don't have space. We have a storage unit, a factory, one of the members, but it's 27 miles away, so they're not, they're going to put some there, but it's going to take a lot of work out there.
Are you looking for any manpower help? Because I can put that, post that out.
Please do. Yeah, please do. I'm looking for manpower help. They finally gave me and my friend who was taking it down access, because they have a key system in there. So yeah, if you give me help, and
get Mike the contact information.
If you get my number, come and see me, please.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen,
Oh,
thank you.
we have another question over here from Ron.
Oh.
Is this something impact you guys?
What?
Is this going to impact you guys having the full-scale layout of these mistakes?
I hope not, because on the old scale, it tries to keep it together. You know, with losing a layout, which is the focus, we're probably going to lose members really quickly. And that always happens in, you know, when clubs get evicted and stuff like this. When clubs lose their thing, historically, we lose a lot of members. They don't want to come, they have no focus. We don't have a meeting place after we take this layout down.
Right.
So we don't even have a meeting place. So, yeah. Your scale, as far as I know, is going to be going. We always have the invite. We have the same space. I'm hoping we can get it going. It will be there. I can't lift anything, but it will be there. I'll try to fix whatever they break. That's my job.
When do they have to be all done?
They have to be out in 30 days. They gave the eviction notice on Monday, the official eviction notice on Monday. Paper, the real paper. We got the thing by email the day before Thanksgiving. Thank you, City of Wallingford.
Yeah.
And you have to be out by the first of the year, or do you have a week after?
No, I think we have, first of the year, we have to be out.
Yeah, so that means basically the start of the new year, that this club has to be out of their current location, so.
Yeah.
Any members, you know, that can give them a helping hand.
Yeah, they're there on Friday night, ripping whatever they can out. This week, I hope to cut the layout in half.
Okay. All right. Sad news, it was a great club,
Yeah.
and,
We're the third oldest club in America.
yeah.
1932, they started. And, of course, the New York Society, Baltimore, us. And they've been in 7 locations. And, you know, they lost them all, but lost a lot of members. And, you know, the old scale never came back. And so we also have a HO affordable layout, but, you know, it doesn't make any money. It makes it less, you know, it pays for itself, that's it. Thanks.
You're welcome. So again, if you can help the club out here,
Yeah.
get them to retrieve their
Friday
assets
night.
before they get locked out Friday night.
Before we get thrown out on that.
Yep. Hopefully they'll give you a little time extra if you're close.
We're trying right now.
Yep. All right. Yeah, it's unfortunate news, but, yeah. Members, if you can help out this club, it would be greatly appreciated, I'm sure. So again, one of the new things we've added to the program is member project showcase. If you're working on anything and you'd just like to give a 5-minute talk about what you've been working on or some lesson you've learned, by all means, you know, send it in to me or in through the Nutmeg Division, and we'll get it in here for one of the meetings. Mike and I have been kind of swapping back and forth, so I tapped Chris Adams, who has his layout, the Valley Local, the New Haven Railroad, Essex to Hartford, and I follow his blog and his Facebook group too, and he had recently been posting on his trials and tribulations on installing DCC in this pristine RS3 that you see up here. He had it in boxes for over a decade. His friend gave it to him, and 529 has personal sentimental value to Chris, even though it's slightly out of his time period that he models in 1948. When Chris was a young man, he actually volunteered at the Essex steam train, and he actually ran on a couple of occasions. So it's got some personal history behind it to him, so he decided he was going to install a nice decoder in here, get it ready for his layout. First problem he ran into is when doesn't really show here. When he popped it open, he found out that, you know, the grease that the old manufacturers used to use likes to turn to wax after a period of time. So it was a complete disassembly, strip it down to all its constituent components. Most of the drivetrain parts had to go into the ultrasonic to get the dried up grease out of it and then start reassembling it. So that was a part of the adventure he hadn't quite planned on. And then the second one is he had done his research, and the decoder he had picked out is supposed to be a drop-in for this unit. And what he found out is, if you look over here, is the slots that were cut into the motherboard don't line up with the tabs that were in the locomotive. And try as he couldn't figure out how to get it in there. One of the things he learned is maybe you should talk about that, you know, through social media, because somebody's probably run into this problem and see how they addressed it. And most people recommended him cut off one of the tabs, use double-sided tape, just set it on one tab and glue it down that way. The unfortunate part is by the time he got that information from other modelers, he had already damaged this, one of the stay-alive capacitors. He literally ripped the solder pad right out of the printed circuit board. So that's one dead decoder now. So again, you know, these don't always have to be, you know, contest quality. You know, we're all learning in this hobby, no matter how long we've been in it. So again, this was a great representation of something that didn't go as planned. And we've all gone through that, I'm sure, more than once in our modeling careers. So even something like this is of great value to the membership. So please, Chris's blog from the web is up there, the Valley blog, thevalleylocal.net, and on his Facebook group. I know some people do not like to go on Facebook, but really, if you just stick to model railroading stuff, stay away from all the other nonsense out there. There's a lot of good information out there.
One other thing,
Yes,
remember that this is the guy we all look up to who does really good work.
Yes.
He's struggling.
yes. This is a guy who's been published in many magazines, and his layout is a showstopper. And yeah, he's the one with a decoder installed. So, and his workbench here, this is very uncharacteristic to see that much clutter on his desktop. He's one of those ultra neat modelers. I could only aspire to be that neat. You know, my workbenches have project creep all over them. There's multiple projects in piles. So just goes to show you. Okay, on to division news. One of the new things, if you haven't caught it, NMRA did make some announcements on social media. The National has finally found a manufacturer to start manufacturing track gauges again, scale gauges. They are back in stock now. I believe every size is available at this point. So if you can't find your other track gauge, because God knows, I don't care how many you have, as soon as you put it down, it transports into an alternate universe and you can't find it again. Or at least until you find the other ones that was somewhere else. And then, sure enough, once you find another one, then that one pops back up. But I seem to be like always looking for my gauges. The Discord channel on NMRA Interchange, it's a great resource. Recently, we've had several meetings. They have meeting rooms on there. It's kind of like we're doing here with a Zoom meeting or something with the planning committee for the Springfield Train Show. So we've got Gordy on there from National. We've got Christina. We've got the new marketing girl, and I forget her name. Amber?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Lucy is the social media one. She's the one I interact with.
Yep, or Lucy was. Maybe it was Lucy that was on there. I didn't see a name. But again, it's a good resource. There's a lot of people showing pictures and stuff on their modeling projects and what they're working on. Every category you can think of has a thread on there from what's on my workbench to all of the APs have subcategories where people ask questions about, hey, does this qualify for the AP, or what do I need to do to qualify for a certain AP? It's a great resource. There's 1,000+ modelers on there now from the NMRA.
We have our own channel. Nobody's active in it yet.
Yes. Yeah. Nutmeg did start its own channel. We'll start posting some stuff up there too. And again, don't forget, one of the things that Gordy's really trying to push is to remember that your NMRA membership is not just sending national money every year. There is value to it. One of the biggest values you can get is the merchandise discounts through the partnership program. If you buy a certain amount of hobby supplies every year and you go through the partnership, they're offering anywhere from 10 to 20% discounts on their merchandise. You can easily rack up enough savings that pay for your membership for the year. So right there in itself, your membership becomes free just by pursuing your hobbies. The other big thing about the NMRA, and that's why we're all here, is the fellowship. We get to share ideas, share knowledge. It's really what the NMRA really should be pushing as that we're all about. We all have common interests, and it's a great organization to share that knowledge and that ability. Like I said, this is my first year as superintendent, but I want to hear from the membership if there's things that we can do at the division level to bring more value to memberships. We want to know about it. We want to hear about it. We've been enacting a lot of things. We'll talk about a bunch of them today. And again, we did add one new member in the division, William Mott from Bloomfield. Showed up on the latest report. So is he here by chance? All right, well, William, if you're watching when we get this up on YouTube, welcome to the division. All right, we're always looking for layouts, especially now that we're on a rotating basis. We're always looking if your layout hasn't been offered as a open house lately. We're always looking for new layouts that members would like to go see. We can learn something from anybody's layout, from raw bench work right up through fully scenic layouts. There's always something that we can learn. And the more people we have participating in the program, the better off it is for everybody. Next item up, again, this came from one of the Nutmeg Division members, Mark Herrick. He said, hey, Central New York has a tool loan program. We should start a tool loan program within the division. So the board will be looking at that and the logistics of how we can handle a tool loan program. Kind of informally did it last time. Ron needed a mini heat gun to try to resolder some surface mount components on a radio in his minivan. Not a modeling project, but still, I said, yeah, I've got one, and I'm not using it at the moment, so you're welcome to borrow it. We'll work out the logistics on that. I know I have like a fast tracks jig too. I'm just getting ready to start building my layout, but I'm sure once I'm done with it, it's going to sit there and collect dust. So if anybody needed a fast tracks jig, unfortunately I model narrow gauge, so I don't know how many of you guys want to build narrow gauge turnouts, but that's okay. But I have the stockade and the tools too, so if you need to just file points or file stock rails or the frogs, you know, those tools will be there too. So again, we're going to work out a system to do that. More will be forthcoming on that. If you have feedback on that, you can add it to the surveys that we put out there, or within the surveys, give us more ideas that we can do. Next meeting is February 10th, as I had mentioned earlier. We're looking for a shoreline location. Stay tuned for more details. I know Chris was instrumental with Rapido Train when they came in to do their vendor showcase. They held it at a meeting room down at the Valley Railroad. So hopefully maybe that'll be the location, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
Chris hosting a layout tour?
I'm hoping Chris gives us a layout tour.
Chris, we'd like a layout tour.
Chris, we'd like a layout tour, please.
You can lay it.
Yeah. Again. So in other news here, we've had a few individuals who have been in the media lately, if you haven't caught it. Mark Herrick and Ray Arnott had an article in the Cowcatcher magazine in the September-October issue on balancing act. If you're not familiar with Cowcatcher, it's a magazine that comes out of New York State, or Texas. Let me go back and restart that. Sorry about that. There we go. Let's try that. There we go. Itchy trigger finger. And Chris Adams has had 3 articles recently in the press. So again, Model Railroad Hobbyist, the online magazine, Model Railroad Craftsman, and Model Railroader. So again, he's been very busy. So again, here's a guy with 3 articles in the last couple of months here in 3 major national magazines, and he had a problem with a decoder install. So, like we said, there's something to always be learned. And again, if you've gotten published anywhere, whether it's the NMRA magazine or any other magazine or online or something, let us know. We'd love to help you brag about it. Communications, Mike, you want to say a few words about communications again? This is an ongoing slide.
No, that's good. So for those of you who are active on social media, this is a tool the national, NMRA national and regional have really been trying to amplify their usage of, so we can get more exposure to model railroaders who are not active NMRA members or may not even know that the NMRA is around or what we do. And the big way we're trying to do that here in the Nutmeg Division showcase our own work, and when I say our, collectively, all of us. We're all doing interesting things that are maybe interesting to us and might be interesting to others and we don't know it. So if you're working on an interesting project, let me know. I'd love to showcase it. You can reach out to me through the Facebook or through another one of the social media channels. I'm happy to showcase your work, talk about you. If you're doing a layout tour or you're part of an open house, I'm happy to advertise that. We're happy to advertise local train shows, all that kind of stuff, just promoting model railroading in general here in Connecticut and Western Mass. So if you're just curious, you can go on to Facebook, you can go on to Instagram, you can go on to YouTube, and there's all sorts of different content that we have. A lot of it is stuff that I just see daily. You can also find the video recordings of these meetings on our YouTube channel. So if there's anything you missed, anything you'd like more clarity on, you can go back on there and see what's going on. So check it out. Let me know if you'd like to see anything or if you'd like to showcase your work on our channels.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, one of the things we also hope to do is go back and record some of our clinics, so that we can put those up on the YouTube channel too. I did the one on weathering styrene to look like wood. I'm going to try to get to that at some point in the next few months here.
We had an audio issue with that. So
yeah, we had an audio issue with that. So basically all my talking during that kind of went by the wayside. So it isn't much of a thing to watch that meeting because it was silent during that. Not much to be learned other than watching me slap a paintbrush down on a model. So again, I'll re-record that with better quality and we'll get it up on our YouTube channel. And again, if you didn't listen to Mike and I when we were on the Around the Layout podcast with Ray Arnett, and we were talking about what's going on in the Nutmeg Division, one of the things that I did bring up was that there's a lot of young modelers out there. There aren't any in the room right now, but we really need to attract them in. And one of the things that really struck me was last year we were out doing some rail fanning on the Valley Railroad with the double header. And I was shocked at the number of young rail enthusiasts that were down there videotaping for their own YouTube channels and everything. And when I say young enthusiasts, most of the half dozen to dozen that I saw down there were generally at each of the photo locations with their mom or dad because they don't have driver's licenses yet. So really, you know, any thought that the hobby is dying and we're not bringing new people in is just silly. If you watch YouTube and some of the other social media networks out there, there's a ton of kids out there that are just coming into the hobby like crazy.
Yeah.
All right, well, you probably can't read this, but the best thing I can tell you, yes, Mark.
Yeah, I belong to the Silk City Model Railroad Club in Manchester. And in the last year, we have had an influx of 18 new members, all under the age of 30.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's telling you how much it's blown
Sad
up.
to say, though, I found that joining the NMRA is a hard sell.
Yes.
They're not interested.
Yep.
They're very interested in the model railroading and rail, but they don't want to join an organization.
Well, again, let's face it, part of it is, they have limited funds to spend on the hobby, and would they rather buy a new locomotive or a piece of rolling stock, or do they want to buy into a membership? Yes, Rich?
find that, I do shows all over. I find that the rail fan hobby is growing leaps and bounds. But the modeling, unfortunately, no, I don't see it. I go to a tinplate show, an all-scale show in Allentown. It's 2 days. They've had up to 4,000 people. It's bigger than a Better Living Center. So it's not small. You see, maybe 10 younger people in the 20s, in the teens, maybe 10 people.
Yep.
I don't see that many.
Oh,
But the rail fan,
yes.
holy mackerel, the young people, that's the big
Yep.
draw nowadays.
Well, again, it's one of those things, the modeling will follow after it,
I hope
you know. And I think we're just starting to see that on our side of the hobby, if you're on the modeling side. Yes,
I
Mark?
wonder how much of that is connected to scale. All of these, young people that I just mentioned, who are all modelers, are HO.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A few of them are in.
Yep.
Silk City, Silk City is the HO club. There are 2 other clubs there, an N club and an O club.
Yeah.
The O club has no new members.
I know.
The younger people are not going into O, but they're going into the smaller scales.
Well, I think part of it too is, you have to look at the age perspective. You know, if your layouts are running in the 80s, 90s, modern, right? They weren't even born yet.
Yeah.
That's old modeling to them. They can't relate to that. You know, if you're not running the latest Genesis locomotives and, you know, what they're seeing out there is what they want to model. So I think we need to get that exposure out there. So if people are keeping current, you know, the time frame with their layouts, then that's the way to hook these people in. I think the electronic side is going to bring a lot of people in. DCC and the whole sound locomotive and all the controls that are coming out now, I think that's going to hook a lot of people in too. So there is definitely things that we can do to help welcome these people in, and we just have to be welcoming.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's the key to it. If we want the hobby to keep growing, if we want the NMRA to grow as a membership, if we can get membership up, the simple solution is the cost of membership will go down. You know, because a lot of the costs are just static costs. So, you know, now that we've gotten the magazine in electronic format and a PDF format, that cost is pretty much stable now. You know, it's the printing costs that will always keep going up and the mailing costs. So as more people shift over to the online version, you're going to see that we can get those costs contained, and that'll be a better selling point to the younger modelers. Because I understand their limited finances, and that's something the National is trying to handle. Yes, Mike?
2 things. Number one, I think I want to hit on the kindness thing again. As someone who has typically been one of the younger people in the room, the kindness hasn't always been there with my experience in model railroading. It's been very much what are you doing here, you young punk, that kind of thing. And I'm not saying that because I think my time here in the Nutmeg Division has been very welcoming. And that's credible here, and a lot of the members who are not here. And we need to keep that going as a division and as a group. So it's incumbent upon us, and the kindness thing, which Gordy pushes off. You've heard Gordy talk a lot, you know, that's very much essential.
Each and every one of us is basically a representation of the NMRA.
Yeah.
So how we treat other people, especially younger people that are interested in the hobby, you know, if we're not welcoming or we're cold to them or standoffish, it reflects back on the whole organization before they can even look any farther. So it's just something to keep in mind. You're at Springfield or one of the big train shows, you know.
I see kids, I go to a couple train shows every year, I see little kids being allowed to run trains all the time.
Yeah.
That's a credit to everyone who
Yep.
brings modules. The other component to this is, you know, that kindness will bring stuff back to us because we will bring in more younger members and they're going to come in with different perspectives.
Right.
And we will start to dispel this notion that we all model in HO, all model the new tiers. And you'll start getting a wider variety of content that brings more people in.
Right.
So it's kind of the mossy rock rolling downhill.
Exactly. Most definitely. Again, this is going to be difficult to read on the screen, but It's the list of all the train shows upcoming. This is on the NER website, so go to the regional website. You can see the list of all the shows in New England and New York, upstate New York. So there's 2 pages this year. Some of the highlight ones coming up that set flyers is, of course, Springfield, January 27th and 28th, the big show. So hope everybody can make it. Hopefully there's no snowstorm this year. So, although people that braved it last year on Saturday, there was only like 10 or 12,000 people there on Saturday. You had the run of the show, man. If you were looking for items to buy, that was the day to be there, I guess. Unfortunately, I went on Sunday when it was back up to 100,000 people. Yes, the NMRA is looking for volunteers to man the NMRA NER booth this year. Nutmeg will not have its own. We're just going to participate with National. National's focus and goal this year is the divisions. So they are going to have brochures from all the divisions and send them in. And as people come in, we'll ascertain what division they should be in, and hopefully we can get division people to talk to them directly and talk about the benefits and what we're doing at each division level. So if anybody wants to volunteer at the table for a few hours, there is a Google spreadsheet that's out there. The best thing to do would be to send to Ron at membership, Nutmeg Division, email address, and he can go in and add your name and contact information to that list. To try to get one of the things National's trying to do too is get a uniform look for everything. They're working on having some form of shirt if you do volunteer for a minimum number of hours. So everybody in the booth will be basically wearing the same thing. The only difference will be the National guys that have their black polos will be wearing those. But the rest of us would all have common t-shirts to wear. So you just pull it over whatever you're already wearing and you'll look the part. So something to keep in mind by all means if you want to give back to the organization. Yes, Mike?
Don't forget, we also have Nutmeg Division hats. They didn't say anything about wearing hats.
That's right. Which is a good thing to do. So, if they say, oh, you would be a Nutmeg Division, that's a perfect way to come in and say, well, I'm in the Nutmeg Division. What questions can I answer for you?
So James has the hat, you can buy one from him today.
And yes.
The other thing we should do is provide them with the regional division map, so that the demarcation of the.
Yes, I hope National has that for hopefully at least the NER region.
I think you can go to NER.
Yep. NER is heavily involved with National. They're the ones basically co-hosting the booth with National. There will also be a separate section of the booth because I believe NMRA is taking 3 sections side by side. There will be a section that's meet and greet. So if you want to just go and hang out and chat with people, they'll have a separate area just for that. So we're not cluttering up. The goal for National is they want new people to be exposed to the NMRA and try to get them to join up. All right, March 9th, Vermont Rails Model Train Show. So you got some time to plan for that one. It's in St. Albans, so it's a ways up there. And it's March too, so it'll probably be still snow on the ground. But if you'd like to get to a different location, that's always available out there.
Montreal.
Yes. Here we go. Providence Northern Motorero Club. They're actually meeting, have their open house today, but it's also tomorrow. So if you want to go down to Warwick, Rhode Island, that show is going on 10 to 4, both days. Another reason to go to the NER website if you're interested in going to train shows. We got this one, I'm like, Essex Junction, Vermont. That's by Burlington. It's a 4-hour ride from here?
Yeah.
And it's today. So thank you for the flyer, but I don't think anybody's going to leave the meeting and spend 4 hours traveling up there to get me. I wish we could have gotten this in sooner. Last month would have been better.
It's turned into a very popular day in Model Railroad.
Yes, it has.
7 events today.
All right, one of the new things we're trying to start to add value to your Nutmeg membership. We're starting what we're calling the Saturday Call Board. James, you want to talk about it again?
Okay, yes,
Or I could do it if you're.
Go right ahead.
All right, well, the whole intent is to get layout owners and people that are interested in operations together and have a separate Nutmeg operating session on Saturdays. So the whole idea is to create a list of layout owners and potential operators, get them hooked up together through James's orchestration here. So if you're interested from either aspect, you should really, we have a separate email address set up for that, Nutmeg Division Operations at Gmail. Send a quick email in there, tell them, hey, I am interested in operations. Hey, I'm a layout owner and I might be interested in hosting an operating session on a Saturday for some Nutmeggers. And again, the whole idea is other divisions are doing this. It's a nice way to build some camaraderie. If you're a layout owner and your layout is operations-based, it's a nice way to get another pool of operators. Because sometimes you run short your regular operating crew, they have other commitments. You may find you can pick up some other operators here that you can add to your call list when you need them for your regular operating sessions. Again, something we're new, it's in the formative stages. We hope to be fully active by
After the show in January.
after Springfield show in January. So again, something to keep in mind. By all means, get your information, get your interest in there. If we have enough interest, we can get this going. I know some people, I think we originally talked about it would be a Saturday morning or
Saturday, any day.
any time on Saturday, because again, some people start saying, well, I'm not available at times. It's between the layout owners and the operators to work out what people would like to do, but just target Saturdays for that session. Doesn't have to be a long session either. You know, whatever you guys agree to. All right. Another one that we added to draw some more interest and get more people to come to the meetings is we added a little modeling contest for fun contest. This is not a judge not scoring points or anything. This will be popular vote. Mike, do you want to talk about it?
Sure. So if you follow other divisions, regions on Facebook or social media, many of them do frequent modeling contests. And the idea with this is just to do something different and get something different for our meetings. This is not meant to be an in-depth, scratch-built, merit award type contest. This is just for fun. And all we're doing is there's 3 simple rules, and it's based around using a recycled plastic food container. Like if you get cottage cheese or butter, you throw those away. We're going to build a little diorama in them. So we're actually going to pick our winner at our April meeting, which will be here in Wethersfield. That's our annual meeting where we do the board vote. So incentive for you guys to show up here to make sure we have quorum. And the winner, we're going to pick one winner via popular vote, and the winner will get a $50 gift certificate to trains.com, which is an NMRA partnership number, so you get a discount. And in terms of the actual contest, it's very simple. You take a plastic food container and you build a small diorama. It can be any plastic food container.
Or on it.
Or in it, on it. Again, the 3 rules are up there. They're very loose in the sense that we want to inspire creativity. We want you guys to push the boundaries a little and come up with interesting things we didn't think about. This has been posted on our Facebook page, so it's pinned at the top. If you go there, you can find this. If you're watching it back on the YouTube channel, this will be part of the stream, and we'll probably send this out via constant contact so you'll have the rules. But we hope to see many of you participating, so we have a lot of great entries and a lot of great photos and some different interesting things going on. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Another item too, the image that's up here with this little micro layout with this little tiny locomotive running around and a couple of shorty past freight cars on there, 20 footers or something. Mike had asked a question to me, and I'll put it out to the membership, was that if we would have a committee that would be interested in building a small, very small, portable, ultra lightweight layout that we could have at tables when Nutmeg Division goes to local train shows. We're thinking about a simple loop of track, maybe a 4-sided module, shadow box style, 4 scenes of typical southern New England train environment, running, and just a loop of track running through. Might be ON 30 would be a good way to go, so we're running HO track. ultra short, 12-foot, 15-foot little cars, diminutive, but, have a coastal scene, have an industrial complex city type scene, bucolic, rural farm scene or something like that. Whatever we want to do, kudos if you can figure out how to make it spin so that people can see the different scenes. As the train kind of stays static to you and the box is moving around you. But if there are people interested, maybe talk to Mike for starters. And,
I'm probably going to put something out on social media about it, or we'll send out something through email.
Yeah. So again, if you haven't done any modeling in a while, this might be a good way to contribute to that. Again, probably build it out of gator foam or something like that, so it's super, super lightweight. And it would be a neat project, and it's something that we can take to train shows. We'll keep it small enough so it's easy to transport. All right, so we have just one clinic today. Don graciously, we asked because Don ran out of time at Springfield. We only had the room for a limited amount of time, and he was just really getting into showing the practical aspects of soldering. So we're going to let Don rerun his clinic again here. Take more questions if people want to try some hands-on. I believe we can do that. You're set up for that, Don? Yep. So if you're afraid of soldering or you're just a little rusty or something, you want to try your hand at it again, you'll have an opportunity to do that. So again, thank you to Don for offering that again. We have 2 layout tours. Here, both in Weathersfield, both in Haven prototypes. So again, after we have lunch, we'll be off to the layout tours from 1 to 4. And I believe that's pretty much it. We'll take a quick break. Yes?
When are they going to close up at 3 this afternoon?
Okay.
We got to be in our granddaughter's performance in Nutmeg.
All right. So anybody that's going to Peters, make sure you get there earlier so that he can be closed up by 3. Keep that in mind. Shouldn't be too hard since we're close by. Yes, Mark?
I have the address for one of these places, but not the other. What is the address?
Okay, we'll get that out. We don't like to put that on social media. There's address sheets over there. That's the way we normally do it.
Okay.
We don't want to be putting people's personal addresses and stuff out to the World Wide Web. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Recording is started. It's all yours, Don.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Don Weigt. I'm going to be talking about soldering. There's a handout you received, or it's going around. Soldering is a little bit of it. I suppose it's like cooking. Anybody can boil water, but taking something out nicely takes a little skill, a little experience, a little practice. I am sitting because A, soldering is easier when you're steady, and sitting promotes that. B, if I get blasted by the projector. So I'm doing this partly out of self-defense. Doesn't take too much to solder. This is kind of overkill, but I have examples for kind of every occasion. You can get started in soldering with something as simple as an iron like this. And they will maybe provide you with a simple holder like this to keep it from rolling around. It's not very safe, not very supportive. So a cage like this, where you're kept away from the actual hot element by this guard or cage, is much better. This sort of thing will work, but it runs at more or less a fixed temperature, and then when you start soldering and you're pulling heat away to do the soldering, it cools off. So it's limited. It'll work for certain size of thing. If you get something a little big, you'd have to let this thing heat up, that big tip, and then there'd be some energy in there it can use to make solder connection to big joints. Soldering is basically making a chemical bond, and for that to happen, you have to get the solder and the workpiece both hot enough. And a lot of people, when they have trouble, get what you call a cold solder joint, and it's just they didn't get the work hot enough, and maybe they got solder on one of the two parts to bond, but the other part is just sitting there in loose contact, maybe held on by the cold flux, and as soon as you put a little pressure on it, it breaks loose. I'm going to pass around a few things, some examples. Let's see where to start. No good place. So I guess it doesn't matter, we'll just start. Soldering is helpful for mechanical things as well as electrical things. Here's an example where I soldered connections to control panel switches. I solder most of the joints in my track, and here's a piece of track with the soldered joint in the middle. I try to solder them with the track straight and then bend it so you don't get a kink where the two pieces meet, or at least less of one. Sometimes you can't, but anyway, there are feeders. If you look at the bottom, there's also some holes here if people want practice after we get done talking. I have homemade switch machine controllers and switch machines. I didn't bring a machine until they're a little delicate. But this is one of the cards for controlling it. And this is a connector bank that goes in a cable under the layout. And so I plug a card in for each turnout I'm controlling. They used to be controlled just through the cable, but on the new layout, it'd be good to have some push buttons on the panel close by, and the sophisticated control system isn't ready yet, and Steve's getting impatient, wanting to run trains with more control. So I'm adding this little cable, little 2-wire cable sticking off. That'll go to push button on the control panel. The 7-wire cable and 10-pin plug goes to the switch machine that I built. It's motorized. Started building those about the time the slow motion and the stall motors came out. I actually started that before I knew about those, so it's an old project. This stuff, the design's 40 years old. Okay, other things you can do with it, you can work on things as small as replacing the wires on a decoder like this. Newer ones are much tinier and would be harder, but this is an old lens 103. Pretty easy to solder on those pads yet. This is an example of the wiring harness I'm running over to the control panel from that little cable. And I soldered the wires onto the switch, and I soldered the wires onto connector pins. And after the first 2 or 3, it was pretty easy. I also do mechanical assemblies like this arm that on the layout, this goes through a bearing and the switch machine moves the thing and wire twists and it moves the point rails. And sometimes I have this little 1/32 drill bit, and my nice drill won't close the chuck that far. So if you look, I sweat soldered it into a piece of 16th brass tubing into a piece of 3/32, and now I have a shank that I can chuck. So there's all kinds of things you can use it for. Here's a piece of the switch machine that I soldered together, a bearing here on the end. Originally, the machine was going to have a whole bunch of micro switches, so it had this wide plate. Design got changed, don't need that anymore. But anyway, it's useful for lots of stuff, not just wiring. For most of the soldering I do, I use this. This is basically the same as that, but it's temperature control. This is an older technology, and what it does is it has a piece of metal in the tip that loses its magnetic capacity. So when it gets up to temperature, there's a magnet in here that pulls the micro switch closed till it gets to temperature, then the field drops and it releases and it switches off till it cools a little bit and it pulls in again when that piece of metal becomes magnetic again. So it sits there cycling. Newer ones sense the temperature and have an electronic circuit in the base to hold the temperature. Okay, so soldering is a chemical process, and the main thing is having materials that will accept solder and having them clean, not having some corrosion on the surface that won't solder, because oxide's very seldom solder. You need clean metal, and then getting enough heat in the right places. Somebody asked last meet about holding stuff, supporting stuff, and I tend to be lazy or minimalist or something, so I don't have a whole bunch of tools for holding things. So sometimes I can get a piece of wire to hang out in space here from whatever it's attached to. I can hold the next piece and solder it together. Sometimes it's helpful to stabilize it. And so there are lots of minimal things you can do. Here's a common old vise and a wooden clothespin, and I just chuck that in the vise, and then I can just clip the piece in the clothespin, and it's easier to solder because it's going to stand still, you know. And if I need a different angle, I can turn it. I put it on its side, I can stand it on its head. So it's pretty flexible. To solder decently, you need to see what you're doing. So if your glasses are way out of date, your prescription's bad, maybe it's time to get new ones. I have some coming in the next week or two. I found that out because I hadn't soldered in a while. I was like, oh. The other thing is, I solder under the layout, mostly mechanical things. You have to see down there. It's dark, and generally you're looking up and a light that is coming is coming from a light on the ceiling somewhere. Well, I was complaining to my daughter and son-in-law. My son-in-law rides furious biking. This looks silly, I'm sure, but you know, this is the lowest of the three brightnesses.
You're supposed to turn your brights down when you're...
You see this? You know, this is serious light. If I'm going to work on something under the bench work here, I want to see it, and it's really helpful. And if you're working low, pivot it down. It's great.
That's a biking accessory?
Yeah.
That is a bright one. There you go, that's a warning.
Yeah. It could also do this. Or send SOS. I haven't needed those under the layout yet. This is really, I mean, it's really useful. You'd be surprised. And when the light is bright, your focus, your iris is closed down, and the focus is better and things are clearer. So if you can't see what you're doing, get some more light on it. The other thing is you want it to be where you can reach. If you're right-handed, you probably want your tools on the right side. Your wire you're going to feed in with your left hand over here, and you can work naturally from left to right soldering things. Don't solder the right-hand one and then have to reach over it. You should always be working past and away from what you've already soldered. It just, I mean, it sounds dumb, sort of, well, duh, but it's easy to forget. Okay, so this thing, my switch died on it a few weeks ago, so, and I didn't have a replacement. I haven't figured out how to order one yet. This is sold as a unit, but anyway, this is sitting here hot. This is an ironclad tip. If it's a plain copper tip, it's going to corrode fast. they don't last very long at all. This is a copper tip with an thin iron coating. They look sort of silvery white when they're new. These last almost forever, as long as you don't scrape them. Never file one of these, or you've converted it to a copper tip and then it's going to die rather quickly. This one is replaceable, so I can change tip sizes and shapes depending on the kind of work. If I get to small stuff like decoder wiring, then I want a small tip. Most of the work I do, from regular wiring down to mechanical stuff, I use this one tip for. But for heavy duty stuff, I use this gun. This is 100 or 140 watts, whereas this thing is 60 when it's going full bore, and most of the time it's going less. So if you need to heat something, mostly mechanical things, this is the way to do it. This is not temperature controlled by any sense. It just goes till it stabilizes the heat loss into the surroundings, matching what's coming out of the tip. It can get much hotter than need be, but it works pretty well for mechanical things. Okay, so when you solder, you need solder on the tip. Not just that it's coated somewhere and gotten tarnished sitting there hot, but you need a drop or a puddle, a thin liquid coat that'll move around, because that's going to be the heat path into the thing you're soldering. So first thing you do is you clean it. How do you clean a tip if you can't scrape it? You wipe it on a damp sponge or a damp piece of paper towel. All of a sudden it's shinier. You probably can't tell there, but it is. And then while it's shining, you hit it with a little bit of solder. There's a lot of waste in soldering. I don't know how to avoid it, because it's the only way to keep the solder fresh on the tip and on the work, so you get good joints. This solder this is electrical solder, it has an appropriate resin-based flux in it, and that's what you're seeing smoking. And what that does is it keeps oxygen away at soldering temperatures, it's slightly reducing. So it'll tend to break down oxides if they're not too bad. But it isn't terribly effective. So you want to have clean stuff to start with. Okay, so I just cleaned up some old wire scraps off the end of the switch, off these contacts. And some of it ended up on here, and that's fine. It can just sit and idle. If it's going to idle a long time, you should maybe add a little more solder. Okay, if you're going to solder, then you need something to solder. Well, that's pretty small, so we can use pretty small wire. This is ribbon. A lot of it's one color with a stripe for one end to let you know where wire number 1 is. But this is the fancy stuff called Spectra Strip. I don't know if you even make it anymore. This is 30 years old too. But anyway, this is pretty fine. So how do you solder that? First you have to strip it. Now, there are lots of different strippers. I like this plain and simple and dirty type where there's a spring holding it open and you just squeeze it to the right place. Well, what's the right place? That's something you can set the stop in this slot here. You slide it up and down until it stops with just the right size opening. Only it's really hard to do, and I don't bother. I've been stripping wire since high school. I've done a few. And you develop a feel for it. Now, the other thing is how much do you strip? And I like to go about twice the thickness of one of the jaw pieces. So what I'm stripping is about the total width of the two. So I stick it in the opening and I put it so there's 3/32 or so, more than a 16th, not an 1/8 sticking out. Squeeze it till it feels right and pull, and it's stripped, usually. If it's not, if you don't pinch too hard, if you don't grip it too hard and cut the wires, you can just squeeze a little harder and try again. If you go too hard, it'll be cutting off strands on something like this, probably all of them. On heavy wire, maybe just a few. That's up to you to decide whether it's a problem for whatever it is you're doing. No, every time I pick this up, without even thinking, I'm cleaning the tip by wiping it. And then I get some fresh solder on the tip, you can tell by the smoke, and then it's time to tin the piece. You don't take a piece of wire or copper or steel wire or whatever you're trying to solder and try to get solder to coat it and make that chemical bond to the surface at the same time you're trying to get it to stick to something else. It's just too many things to do at once. You should get the solder to stick to it first, which is called tinning, because solder is partially tin, and that's true even this is the old stuff with lead, about half lead. The new stuff is mostly tin and about 4% silver, but they're both containing tin, and they're both called tinning when you coat the surface. Now, people think you need to wrap these things and tie knots and braid them and all that to get a connection. For the kind of things we're doing, there's not a lot of stress. You're not subjecting them to a lot of vibration, a lot of bending, a lot of pulling. I find you can just bring two pieces side by side and melt the solder and they'll flow together and it'll be fine. Now, I'm shaking a little bit, so that makes it harder. Now, you can shake all you want as long as it's liquid and after it's set. But in there, 1 or 2 seconds when it goes from liquid to solid, it has to be pretty steady. One thing that helps that, when you can, is working at a table. You can lean the side of your hand on the table and hold the wire, and it's a lot steadier. Any shaking you do tend to have gets damped by being pressed against the tabletop.
Did you tin both surfaces?
I didn't tin the switch now because it was soldered before and that old tinning is still there. So, yeah, but not today. Okay, once you have a joint, not every time, notice the back of that bus thing I'm passing around has no insulation, but most things you want to insulate. And these days, you know, there used to be things called spaghetti tubing, change dimensions that you have to cut to fit and all this. Nowadays, there's heat shrink tubing. This stuff shrinks about half of its diameter. So there's a limit. You don't want it to be too much bigger than the terminals or wires, but you take a piece like this and cut it to, I like about 5/8 of an inch for most things. In the case of 2 wires, I have about 1/4 inch of overlap soldered, and then I want about 1/4 inch beyond on either side. So 5/8 is about right on most terminals. 3/4 is good for wire-to-wire connections. Okay, so this stuff is heat shrink tubing, and I bought a bunch of it. I have packs at home, but anyway, it comes in like 3-foot lengths, and I cut them down and make more manageable size pieces out. And then I cut a piece, and then you slip it on the wire. Now, if you're doing a lot of cables and things, you can't slip it on afterwards. You have to remember to slip it on the end you're going to solder it, then slide it up to cover the joint. Now, this isn't technically soldering, but it goes hand in hand with it. So now if it's too small, it won't fit in there. But this one's big enough. I shouldn't have done it. See, the habit is when you're at a vise, you always unscrew the open the jaws when all I had to do was this. Okay, so there it's slipped on, but it's not secure. It'll slip right back off until, now let's hope we don't blow a fuse. This thing's a 1,000 watts. It's really made for other things, but I have one for other things, and I use it for this. You can also use a match, a lighter, just any little heat source. It might help if I plug it in. All right. I brought my own cord. That's mine. Okay. All right. This quit working the other day too. All this 40-year-old stuff doesn't last. You know, they don't make it like that. Okay. Now, this, in a few seconds, gets hot enough for the coils to glow. More than enough to heat and shrink heat. Where'd the wire go? Set it down. I'm constantly losing stuff. Okay. I like to try to heat it from both sides. It's kind of me. I'm a little anal that way. Okay. But here's the joint. Now, let's see. Here's the 18 gauge. This is what a lot of my block wiring is done with. And I solder that right to the side of the rails. If you looked at those feeders, they're 18 gauge. Now, there's a lot of stuff I'm not saying that's in that write-up. So I hope that covers a bunch of stuff, any questions you might have. Now, this is pretty tough insulation. Come on. It helps if you talk to it. Okay, so there I've stripped those, and I don't think I've cut any strands. Not that it would matter if I cut a strand or two on 7 or more strands, because you're going to have solder right there anyway. And when you heat it up to solder, you're going to melt the insulation a little bit. It's going to creep back just a little. Okay, so here's some wires to solder to. You know, okay, I have to hold this and the gun or tip iron and the solder, and how do I do that? Well, at this point, it is handy to support it if you can. You know, sometimes under the layout, I've already attached it to things, and I can wrap it around a post on a bench work or something. But anyway, again, wipe the tip. Just don't even think about it. Just do it. And then grab some solder. Now, I get a little on the tip, then I put it against the work. I really want the work to melt more solder, not the iron tip. That means you've really gotten the workpiece hot enough. So you get this nice cloud of smoke. And some people put a little fan up to blow it away. I suppose that's a good idea. I don't bother. Okay, now, if you're going to cut wires and stuff, there are lots of fancy cutters you can buy, but a Xuron track rail nipper works just as well. It's basically the same tool. This has black on it from a Sharpie. That's to tell me it's the old one that I don't use on rail. It's still fine for practically anything else. So that's what I'm going to cut most wires with. Anything that I don't want to, I don't like to use the stripper for too much cutting of wires. Okay, so now here's about a 3/4 inch piece. I'm going to slip it onto one of these wires. And notice it's nice and steady there in the vise. That kind of goes without saying, but all right. Now we'll make a mating piece. You can feel the difference. When you get through the plastic, which is pretty soft, and hit the metal, there's an increase in resistance. Just stop there, don't squeeze any more, and give it a pull. And there you have a stripped wire, most of the time. In the dark ages, before I believed in wire strippers, I used to just use cutters. But I got a little more sophisticated. Now, I didn't mention this yet, but I was having trouble when I started soldering a week or two ago, and it got easier after I'd soldered a while. There is such a thing as conditioning a tip, just like they season a grill. If you get this thing so it's been used for a while soldering, that tip kind of adapts to it. I believe that with all my heart. It just works better. Now all I'm going to do is hold these side by side. There's solder on both of them. I don't have to put more solder in. There's a little bit on the tip too. Just hold it still, and there it is. Okay, so how do you know it's good? Give it a yank. Maybe not that hard, but just for illustration. It's connected. It's not going to fall apart. The other thing is, how do you center that insulation on the joint? Well, what I do is I slide it one way or the other, so it's right to the joint. I mark where that is with my finger. I pull it down to the joint here and see how much that is between, and go about halfway. So that's about centered. Normally it would still be in the vise. And they threw an iron on it. Now, if you heat this long enough, it'll kind of stick to the insulation, which is good to a point, but remember, you're also softening the plastic. You don't want to overdo it. Okay, so here's the joint. There's none of this that is hard. If the stuff's clean and you have reasonable solder and reasonable tools and know what you're doing, it's pretty straightforward. But if you have any of those things wrong, it becomes almost impossible. Now, I make push rods. My homemade switch machines push and pull a link to one of those arms to move the points. And what I do with them is make most of them out of 16th inch music wire, which they use for model airplane landing gears and lots of things where you need strength. This is springy stuff. And I use, this is 16th inch, and I use 3/32 K&S telescoping brass tubing, which is 16th on the inside. This same stuff I use for bearings, except I put the next size down, the only size down in for bearings that's 16th outside, 1/32 inside. Okay, so I'm going to solder this to that. Now, this music wire doesn't take solder particularly well. It's also, in this case, not an electrical connection. Actually, it's going to end up carrying electricity, but that's by accident, not going to be used as an intentional connection. Now, if you're going to solder something like this, it's good to have it supported. And what I like, I have this block that goes in the vise that has grooves, and you can put either the wire or the tube in a groove the right size and lightly clamp it and hold it in place. So now you can work with it. It's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to maybe use this, but I'll probably end up using the gun. Okay, now I know this stuff doesn't solder real well, so this is a misnomer if there ever was one. This is called no corrode. It's acid flux. Well, yeah, it'll corrode, but we don't care. They use this in plumbing. I've taken apart 30-year-old joints. I don't really see much in the way of corrosion, but technically it corrodes. So now I've just dipped the tip of this. This has a thin coating of this no corrode flux. Now if I can line it up, stick it in the end of the tubing here. What I like to do is have a link with about 1.5 inches to spare, and I start with it about in the middle. And that way, when I get it on the layout and see it's too long or too short, I can just heat it up and slide it together or pull it apart to adjust the length. So some of my linkages don't have any visible adjustment at all. It was all done that way. I'm getting lazy and I'm starting to use threaded links on the ends and clevises, and it's a little simpler, a little more, well, it's simpler to adjust. Okay, so again, pick it up, wipe it, get some fresh solder. This is a stretch for this iron. I'd be better off, I think, with the gun. Now, and yet, see, I got, first of all, it's hot enough, it's flowing nicely on the outside. Then I got to the end, I could see it wetted nicely onto the tubing. So, this is in about 3/4 of an inch. Give it a little while to set, because it cools off pretty quickly, but not a real good visual indicator when it has. So, nice strong joint. While it's still hot, I like to wipe it to get rid of most of this stuff. You could take it off with paint thinner, acetone, lacquer thinner, I don't know. A lot of organic solvents, but these days we're told not to do that. And you don't have to. You can just wipe most of it that way. And then if you don't like that lump of solder at the bottom, you can file it off if you want it real pretty. Or you can ignore it because it'll be under the layout. It's your choice. But that's what I use this file for. I just take the big one until it's reasonably smooth. Now, the other thing I've been doing, I should have brought a different piece. Okay, I'll do it on a different piece. So pass this around. I think I have another piece of, yeah. So if I did that with a piece like this, it plugs into my switch machine, the output arm, that would go and move the points. If I want to get fancy and have a clevis, you can buy 256 threaded rod, or you can buy these clevises with plastic push rod material, which is handy sometimes when a rigid metal link isn't good. Like it's good for between the 2 points on a crossover, which aren't electrically the same, and they're maybe far enough apart that a rigid push rod is the best, but a lot of times a rigid push rod would be okay there. But anyway, it's handy if you have to go around bend. It's handy if you need to insulate one end from the other. And then what it is, the moving part's pretty flexible, so it's inside another plastic tube that supports all but the end inch or so of it. And so it moves in and out. Anyway, if I wanted to, you can't really thread this music wire, it's tempered. And it's a little small. And I just told you, the music wire doesn't solder very well. Back in the old days, I would have used telephone wire. Remember when they had cables that were 1,000 wires? Well, I'll tell you, if you got 10 feet of that stuff, you'd never run out of thin copper wire for stuff like this. But I want to attach this threaded rod to this. Now, I'm going to do it over here. It's going to be too long, but I can take my Dremel with a cutoff wheel to this at home and shorten it up. Okay, so it is useful. I don't normally do it in this order. I have a piece and then add the clevis. But all I do is grab it here. Now, this does not have to be touching. Doesn't have to be particularly beautiful, but I'm pulling it fairly tight to get it pretty secure. Now, the thinner wire would tend to let the things flop around so they weren't quite the same angle. Well, this thicker stuff does a better job of keeping things aligned straight. Anyway, I twist I don't know, what is it, 8 turns or so, maybe? Now, you could trim it later. I can trim it now and it might end up a little neater because the solder might cover up some of the cuts on the tips of the ends of the wire. Okay. Now, this is too far on the thread, so probably won't slide, but I can, being threaded, I can just twist it, get it to where I want it, near the end, not quite to, but near. Now, this is another one of those things where little no corrode does a world of good. So, if you have any kind of little piece of wire or toothpick or I have wooden sticks from cotton swabs from something I worked on 30 years ago. They kept throwing them away and I kept pulling them out of the trash. Well, I have a bundle about that thick of these 1/16 swabs still. Just think of the $2 I saved. Okay, so this is now coated with no corrode. You think you've seen smoke? Huh. Just wait. Okay, now if this were to one of these linkages with the Z-bend that's going to go into my switch machine, I might want this to hang down. I might think about which side of the push rod assembly I soldered it to. Of course, since I can always turn it in one of those brass tubing joints, don't have to worry about it now particularly. But anyway, this is coated. I'm not going to mess with the iron. I'm going to go straight to the gun with this. And you saw it's not a whole lot of flux. This is called flux too, just same as the rosin. When they talk about rosin core, flux core solder, that's what they're talking about. Somehow, believe it or not, they've passages in there that's full of flux. I never found out exactly what the process is, whether they have the flux there and extrude the molten solder around it or into it, or how they do that. Anyway, you'll see a little smoke here. Now, notice I've protected the workspace with a cardboard box opened up. You don't want to do this on any nice surface. You don't want to do it on your kitchen table and get in trouble. You don't want to really do it on your workbench and wreck your workbench immediately. Okay, so you probably saw the smoke. Now this, I don't know how hot this is. It's plenty hot. Got to wait a little while because right now if I move it, it's probably still molten and it'll move. You could technically try to cool it with a little spritz of water or something. I wouldn't. It might affect the strength. It's kind of messy process. Okay, you can wipe it with a couple layers of paper towel and it's fine as long as it's dry. If it's wet, you get steam and you burn your fingers right away. This thing is running 700 or 800 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a lot hotter than boiling water. That's why you hear a hiss every time it touches the sponge. This thing is probably even hotter. Okay, so here is a threaded rod soldered onto a smooth piano wire link. And it's not technically the world's greatest solder joint. It's a little blobby looking, but guarantee you it's not going to slip. One thing that happens as that cools, I think the solder shrinks faster than the wire it's on too. So it's mechanically gripping probably in addition to the chemical joint. Okay, that's basically it. Now when I solder little stuff like these connectors, which I haven't passed around, but there were some on the push button and on that switch machine card. When you heat these up to solder to the pins, they're so little, you're heating up the plastic too, and things can soften and move and shift, and then you end up with a sloppy out of tolerance connector, which might work and might not. And the same is true on these twin row things that plug into these connectors for ribbon cables. And so what you want to do with those, and it's sort of an example there, is leave them plugged into something, and the thing they're plugged into helps cool the plastic and the end of the contact that's not being soldered to, and keeps things from softening the plastic and distorting and ruining the connector body. And to do that most easily, I like to clamp something like this in the vise, and again, turn it till it's a good angle. At home, I actually have one of these magnifier things with a light. I don't find the magnifier too useful because I'm not used to it to judge depth, but that light sitting about here shining on the work is real handy, even though I have a fluorescent right overhead. So good light, a good layout. If you were left-handed, you'd want the iron over here. You know, I'm right-handed. I find it works best this way. Feed stuff in here and solder from that side. If you're left-handed, I'm sure it'd be better soldering over here. But does that feel awkward even simulating it? So you need to be set up so it's comfortable, so you're steady and the work is clean, and off you go. So I will stay here despite the smell of pizza. And if somebody wants to come up here and try soldering something, you're welcome to do so. And I didn't demonstrate soldering to the rail, but I could. Looks like we have.
Two quick comments. One, you can get very nice, small, hot air makers that are designed really for doing the heat shrink, shrinking the heat shrink tubing, and they work really well. And two, you can get little aluminum clips that are spring-loaded that you can clip on things as heat sinks.
Yes.
If you're soldering to the little pins, or you're soldering to the leads on an LED, for instance, if you clip those on the lead close to the thing you don't want to get hot, it will help soak the heat away so that you can heat up the pin well, but not destroy the plastic or the LED or the connector.
Yeah, LEDs might be a good place for that. I don't like using spring-loaded clips on insulation because insulation gets soft and it gets pinched. Distorted. But a bare lead, yeah, it would be good for that. And if you aren't careful with an LED, you can heat that little bit of whatever it is. I'm not sure it's plastic, but epoxy maybe, and then it'll shift. Maybe it'll not work after that. So that's a good idea. Yeah.
Don, if I could ask, without Radio Shacks around anymore, where do you go to get wire, solder, flux, all these things? Online, or are there any retail that you would recommend?
It's hard. I use speaker wire for my track power, so that I get wherever they sell speaker wire. The last I think I got was at Best Buy. Anyway, it is hard. I mail order a lot of stuff from DigiKey.
What's the name?
DigiKey. D-I-G-I-K-E-Y. They're Thief River Falls, Minnesota, which is a funny name for a store.
All electronics, too.
All electronics is done.
All electronics.
Oh, no.
How is it?
Oh, no.
Yeah, the last couple of months we went out of business.
Mauser used to be good. Steve, where do you like? I don't know. Pretty much, yeah.
The cables and connectors are doing.
Yeah, I got there once and they were having out of business.
Yeah, the only place I know of still in Connecticut is down in New London, Gen Electronics.
That's quite a ways.
Yeah.
If you need 10 feet of wire. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a challenge. So that's why I tend to buy things in quantity. Yeah. That is one of the hard parts of this part of the hobby. But it is so useful for making things like my switch machine linkages. I do not try to build models this way because I'm kind of a get it secure with lots of solder guy. I don't do real fine, no solder showing kind of work. If you want to do stuff really tiny, they have solder paste that actually is solder bits and suspension, and you can, boy, they do a lot of those surface mount electronics. They screen print, paste where they want the joint, set the part on, and then heat it up with some kind of airflow or infrared heater to melt it. But I'm not doing that. Kelly saying solder's wired onto cables half this dimension, and I'm going to try it. That's part of why I have the little bitty tip here. I haven't tried it yet. That's going to be a challenge. I'm impressed that she does it, and seems to be willing to sell those things. I'm not sure I'd sell them. I think that's a pretty demanding thing. Maybe she has a trick. Maybe she knows something I don't know yet. I haven't tried soldering anything that fine except on circuit boards.
When you solder your rail feeders, are you using the no-coat flux?
Mm-hmm.
No, just using solder?
No, I just clean the side of the rail. I'm using nickel silver. It seems to solder pretty well now. If you take an old piece of rail like this that once was ballasted and it was painted, you have to at least scrape down so you have some clean metal. Generally, if there's a little bit of paint left in between scrapes, it'll mostly come off. It'll probably be all right. But that's why I use a file sometimes to clean it up after I scraped a little, and then I take a bright boy. I know they're bad for track, but not down there. The wheel's not going to touch that. I don't worry about it too much anyway. Anyway, I cut this down to a wedge, and then it fits. I looked, every part of the track is labeled at the NMRA website except the part between the railhead and the bottom. I think it's called the web, but it's been so long since I knew for sure. I'm afraid to call it that, or somebody will call me on it. Anyway, I just stick the bright boy in there and scrape a little. This one's not cooperating too much, but anyway, you just have to get something in there to scrape down to bare metal, and then it'll solder. I brought some rail joiners if anybody wants to try soldering two pieces of rail together. You can do that too.
I used to Dremel with a wire brush.
I've damaged a lot of things with it. A, it can hit things you're not intending to do, and B, it heats the work up if it's running very fast. So you have to be careful. I just say be careful, my experience.
Remember where the brass brush works really well.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying the plastic. They have a plastic brush too.
Yeah.
That works better. I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Steel rail, steel coated rail in GH. What would you recommend? I know a big gun for sure.
I haven't done it, so I don't know. Again, steel doesn't take solder real well.
I know.
I don't know. It might be some kind of bracing rod that work better, but it's not something I've tried.
Brass models, when they're going to be soldered together, like All-Nation.
Yeah.
What would you, your soldering is beautiful. What would you recommend?
If you're talking about putting details on or something like that, people talk about these resistance units. I don't have one. I've never tried it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have one. So
Yeah.
There's a dropper resistance solder.
okay.
Yeah. If you get good at it, I have a Shea that has a broken solder joint for me.
It's also a good job for imports.
Oh, yeah.
And, Grant told us you were in Southern America, not, honestly, Southern America. And, but also I could use it.
Yeah, I knew a guy who built a little scratch-built N-gauge Sloco that won a long time ago at the National Best in Show. And he used a tiny little micro torch on propane. And I think with burns or something, probably intended for jewelry use.
All right.
Little self-evident safety tip, besides a nice headlamp, if you're working under the layout, solder from the side, don't solder directly above yourself.
Yeah. The other thing is wear thick cotton clothes. Solder can drip on that and it won't get on your skin.
Yeah.
You'll have to kind of dig it out of the cotton, but it'll protect you. I was going to mention it, so thank you.
Any other questions for Don right now? Show of hands, does anybody want to try their hand at some soldering?
Yeah, I'd like to try to stop.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, and
Because if not, then Don can start cooling his equipment off, but I think it'll be, we'll stop the recording and, time for food. Thank you, Don.
if you try and do this at home and get stuck on
You go to the auction, which is coming up, and he did, buildings that he built of stations on the valley, and he made 6 or 8 of them, and they are gonna go up to auction, and at the they're beautiful. He has pictures of the original station and the kits that he built, they're all custom.
now, press it into the
Repeater guy.
valley between the railhead and then feed that in against the rail, not against the iron. That's the way the rail's hot. Okay. Don't want the communication. Okay, you can't really drag it. You have to get it where you want.
Okay, so then, should be good, decent.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's plenty of solder.
With my wife.
No, rail, especially, you can't chip up to reduce the amount of solder. You can do solder work or something, try to reduce it a little. Okay, now. This is not a sensor. I find real helpful and the wire. Yeah, and if this is plenty stripped, if you don't want a bunch of air down in the road bed, you might want to shorten it up.
Right.
Because it's more maybe than.
Yeah.
Okay.
That much is all you need. Again, you want that down below the railhead. I have mine just about straight up and down. That's just preference. Or in the middle. Well, you can always straighten it by pulling it down in from underneath.
Is that enough of a mechanical connection, you think?
Yeah, as long as you're hitting the solder. Yeah, you're right in the middle, sure.
That should work?
Okay, now you want to do something to keep pressure on it.
Right.
So it doesn't move away. Now you have solder on both parts. You don't have to add more to the work, but you need fresh solder on the tip anyway.
You're not putting you don't think you're gonna make it.
Pretty good, huh? Yeah, okay. I would be using thinner wire anyway. But yeah, you don't need, yeah, you don't need as much contact area.
See, I just brought mine straight up.
Yeah, and you just right on that.
You get a little paint on that, it's pretty much disappeared. If anything,
Well, that's a nice cut, like mine. But, yeah. Yeah, a little practice. Well, see, I've been doing that.
okay,
Now I know.
now, there's lead in it, so wash your hands well before you have pizza.
So the town is coming back. And then you don't need They've had experience.
Yeah, I think, it sounds like it may be the same, want several buildings. For years. It's got the building. Those are, yeah, I don't like it. Oh, no, I never used it. Never used it. Yes. At least 30 houses. You selling all this? Yeah. Then you know what? Have everything oh, yeah. Just doing that. Good morning. I had some other people that want to say hello this morning. Yeah. 190 degrees every day.
You know, how they got their jobs.
I predict you guys have to move out right away. Yeah. Until the French shell and I involved in the large part of
Okay, let's put it that way.
Yes.
Does someone know where that piece of box top is with the drill bit?
Drill bit is here. Oh, good. Along with a couple of other things. Yeah.
We gotta be out for the day, you know?
What?
The school board up there.
Yes. Yeah, the room.
That's
the room. Don't know as far as you gotta go.
Yeah.
So where are they gonna move that?
So they're gonna have to move on somewhere.
Well, very good. Like a lot of other communities.
What's that?
George.
Yeah, thanks.
They have space in the existing school. They're gonna be school lunches, but you know, it's, they won't have like. So they're gonna be as slow as possible.
My experience is they can't move until there's
That's the I worked 11 years. They were paying $20,000 a month for it. 2 years.
Yeah, 35. Okay.
So, yeah, I remember this. So I don't have it. 2 persons, I get an order, buy stuff. Yeah, and we're talking, that's for electrical. He's $10,000. I've got a question. I don't have any help for me. And they don't plan it out. And, that goes all over. The bosses don't spend all the money. The other thing is, they don't plan it. Yeah, they don't plan it. I got called. Rich, the call me. 30 days they don't pay. Yeah. You know, they're all crazy. Because they have to run over. Now, that day, they would have got 2% off. Yeah. But they don't think of it.
Yeah.
I can't do it fast anyway, I have to go through the proper channels.
The proper channels. You know, I get the lady who does the bills.
Later on, I never expected. Some of those in less than 6
You know, when they start charging, they charge them. They're losing money. Yeah, and they say that loss.
Did I choose, you don't use any flux on your wire connectors?
Oh, why not?
No, you don't.
So just what's in the socket.
Rosin.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Part of why there's so much solder waste is you're getting the flux from it. I did buy some, flux, electrical flux, a little tin like this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I tried it, but you know, there are times that might be a little helpful, but you're not gonna take old solder and put it in with that.
Yeah.
And get a joint, so I found it limited myself.
And it's silver and lead, is that what you?
New one, tin.
Tin, silver, okay.
Yeah, because you know,
Yeah.
slip that through.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's all. So anyway, when you remove the server pad, that's like.
Yeah.
Yes.
He basically just retired a year or two ago. So, I'm absolutely stunned at email, so I'm equally distant from all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice, great grandfather. No, they got asked him there.
I just don't know. I'm word about that.
Yeah, the great grandfather. Cool. Stories.
I had notes.
No.
That was 1-1.
Stand by. Stop.
You been on that?
Railroad on his, on study locations, or make sure that every week we're keep up with questions. He's got a huge, gravel operation running there. Using all the money. You got still farm land, because that's, where does the farmers are?
Yeah.
The thing is, when we tend to this day, everyone, when I'm starting to we went all along the river.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's another thing. That's like how the deal.
Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
That's when it. The rock that he's quarrying out there is very granary. I don't know,
I'm pretty sure that's how I found it.
Starting
Thank you. Entertaining, fun, and educational.
Glad you enjoyed it.
This is literally the price they have. 120
How many tools you use and what you think of a simple job.
Yeah, a little overkill here because I brought big and small tools. I did look and see.
It's a staggering amount of stuff.
That's the thing that gets the person starting out, is every time you turn around, they need a tool they don't have. Once you have them, let's go to the base.
And, that is,
Oh, where did I have it? Oh, where did I have this right off the layout. It's going to be the new control panel. Right now it just hangs loose on the island. Two guys working in the upper yard. Great. Yeah. So now when my freight go up there, they come down a different part. Hold up. As it should be.
As it should be.
Inch by painful inch.
It was fun seeing your layout.
Welcome to come again sometime. It is quite a haul.
Fascinated by your turn-on engineering.
Yeah.
Both the electronics and the mechanical. Very ingenious.
Yes. Couldn't just buy it when I started doing it. Could
But given when you're trained in, you gotta have fun with it, you know?
That's right. I taught myself quite a bit of digital electronics work.
Let me show you a little movie of my latest project, which I programmed in Arduino to run servos and hook the servos up to the doors in my roundhouse. So I can open and close the doors of the roundhouse with my NMRA handheld.
Yeah, like to see that. I'm getting a roundhouse kit for Christmas and interested in trying to do something similar myself. You have each one on its own, or are they grouped?
That's how I did the mechanical, which is the puppy tape shield of the roundhouse, which includes the top, and use L-channel aluminum overtray. Quick screw through the top, and then wire lead back there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Walk away. What are they doing? Really fine piano wire, bent it around to create a loop and cut it off. So I had a little tiny stub, and I fused that into the center. And then these rods are have a open and goes into the room, so that they can open and close the door.
Or just like this from the top?
Yeah, it's actually a complete use, so there's this loop is a straight release loop that I can overdrive and underdrive with a slightly, not have the door.
There could be.
Wires to the sword on the servo. Airplane servo link ends to keep it from sliding in. Because the servo is driven by a servo driver board, and that's up to the Arduino.
We have one retainer for the two wires?
The retainer is controlling the servo, the wires go into the back of the servo.
Okay.
Just like that.
No, I mean two wires.
Oh, yeah, one retainer for the two wires. The doors are opening and closing the same, so the wires are changing.
Right, yeah.
And they're...
And if you let it out. And they do that the same way out there.
Take another door. You open? The door opens. The door closes. All that is being driven by the Arduino, as the I4C output for the control board, power coming in, the VCC signal coming in, that's the Arduino. Go for it, it makes the whole thing happen. So if you tap it, this command, it drives the appropriate servo board.
I'm going to ask you how much you would pay to write itself.
The code?
Yeah.
There is a nice NMRA ECC decoder library, and there is a library for driving the servo board. The code to actually put that all together is completely okay. The code to actually listen to the packet, decode the packet, not decode the packet, but decode the command.
Yeah.
Save the position in DRAM so that if you turn the power off and back on, the doors will start flipping back and forth, right? They stay where they were. The array of the minimum and maximum of the servos, they're all unique, right? The position's not that high. So I'd have an array, an 8-way array for the doors, plus and minus for each of the doors, minimum and maximum. Yeah, these are good people. I've got a very similar one that makes it a lot.
All those doors look like they're pretty synchronized too.
Right, well, it's one servo.
Yeah.
Driving both doors, so.
But the linkages have to be pretty well matched and.
Yeah, there's a couple of doors that the little loop is not quite the right place, so the doors don't look quite as they're sort of like this, the doors are like that. Too bad.
It's hard with it mounted to the roof. It's hard with it mounted to the roof. It's easily adjusted in place.
Well, it's not just, that's easy, to just getting the wire to the little loop on the door, having to exactly the place on the door, because if you move the wire, it's so close to the hinge, that moving it just a little bit makes the door open and close very differently than if it's in a different place. So you got the two doors, and if the two loops that are close to the hinge are exactly the same distance from the hinge, the doors are going to open and close in a different space. Right, the angle being just extended from the hinge is tiny.
Yeah, I'm in.
Let me tell you how this.
It was a fun project.
Wouldn't be fun if it were too easy.
Right. Well, that's a keep this thing released.
I use them for a lot.
Oh, yeah. Great idea.
Collecting them for years. Eventually they get damaged, have to be replaced.
This is an amazing example of really nice wire after wire after wire.
4 decades experience. Thank you, guys, great question. You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, it's not worth the trip right now because people. That's when we get all our. I have, you know, it's like, you're gonna have your annual meeting, table. We open the table, so the table hydraulic. I had the choice of watching something else on the internet, going downstairs, it's nice, I thought we have all these online resources. I don't know what you find out. Go down and try it out.
Number of doors are here. Want to be all the same, but also some doors are moved, some doors are wider. So that means new doors. They don't stay in the way you want it. So, yeah, this is. Well, I have these colors, yeah. At the moment, locomotive that's in the box. was the same boxcar number, everything. In the other. But it may not be the whole person that boxcar. You may have a run low tank or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that I've given them already about a month and a half. Really, a month and a half ago notice. I mean, they literally but I'm just thinking more of if maybe it'll be part-time. Head-wise, on a computer. This is good. Looking at verifying that what's in the building, what is in the material, is in the and at times it's in other So that's what you're going to put in the bill of material. For the drawing, and unless you would know that part number is wrong, like serial, the part number that they need wanted was 1, 2, 4, 8, 2, whatever. Here we do 1, 2, 4, 5. Whatever. Yep. Luckily, we're like it's part of the time. Because right now we are tremendous. Usually, let's say you were placing an order today, we maybe just tell you 6 weeks. Maybe at 3 months of that. It used to be 6 weeks. Right now, I can buy almost 60 machines. And someone can take a couple of days. One machine. And others, I could be 2 or 3 after the day. Anything over 3 months, I don't like it. I just, because right now I have they can't keep up with making the change. So what I actually do is I have a bill of material. Once I review that bill of material for the first time, if there's any drawings associated with it, I'll keep a copy of those drawings. The bill of material. So the next once that is I'll take one. Engineering, sometimes where they didn't make a change, was but they put it wrong. Because the part is like, that part has nothing to do with the it's like, okay. Yeah, a lot of
Great place, one of them out of and third, there's a lot of old ones. We discovered this whole thing. Well, that's what I was saying. I think I may know what we want. It's a right press. I don't want to. All right, see you then.
Once again, our meeting
hoping that they would do a graduation present because it was in my parents' got me a lifetime relationship, but I don't know. Graduate.